起きろ。なんだこの闇。
In 2025, many of the old battle shonen legends have started to phase out into what would be known as modern or new battle shonen, with even reruns or continuations of older shows actually finishing, like Dragon Ball Super and its anime wrapping up around 2018. Boruto and its anime run is concluded, and we're waiting for that to come back. Naruto and Bleach are completely done. And even One Punch Man sort of finding himself circling in and out of relevancy as this huge serious battle against Cosmic Garl finishes up, and we saw more or less of what he could do. The next up-and-comers would then be monstrous inverse powerhouses that would create a new generation of aura farmers that would once again spark up the community into arguing and discussing how they do against the popular characters from the old days. In particular, these main two at the moment are Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen and Jinwoo from Solo Leveling. They both serve a somewhat similar role in absolutely dominating their competition and reaching almost omnipotent levels of strength relative to most of their verse. Both get glowing blue eyes, domain expansions, an untouchable demeanor, and a multitude of abilities that have people questioning how they'd fare against even Goku. With 99% of fiction not even being able to touch Gojo, let alone fight him, and Sung Jin-woo seemingly pulling out infinite levels of abilities and upgrades whenever he next appears, and whatever's plot convenient to easily slam whatever adversary comes next, no matter how absurd it seems. That being said, this debate is actually, and surprisingly, pretty clear-cut. For those unaware, Jujutsu Kaisen in its manga run has completed and finished, and it did quite a while ago, with Solo Leveling's manhwa finishing as well, despite both series having an incompleted anime that is returning in a year or so. Solo Leveling actually also has a sequel series that is completed in novel form called Solo Leveling Ragnarok, which has some of its manhwa finished, and its initial light novel is obviously done, which gives us a lot of insight into the strength of Jinwoo that the anime run of Solo Leveling actually doesn't really provide. I'll try to leave as many spoilers out as I can, but I'm going to be honest, at this point in the game, it's kind of impossible. These things have been done for a long time. Maybe I'll try to keep certain plot points out for JJK, but it really does become a bit hard when you're power scaling because you kind of have to go over serious battles in the story. Certain enemies they fight will be pivotal for their scaling and will have to be mentioned. For example, Gojo fights Sukuna eventually. Ooh. Anyway, I'm mainly making this video because it's thematically fitting. It's the two modern shonen powerhouses, and I know some of you guys probably want to know what I think about Jinwoo's scaling in general. I've gotten a lot of comments. People really wanted me to make a few videos on him. So with that being said, sit back and learn some shit. Let's cut out all the fluff with an over-explained intro trying to tease the results of the whole video. I'll be honest off the bat, and for those of you that don't want to be spoiled about Solo Leveling's plot, and they just want to know what I think, Jinwoo flatlines Gojo and his entire verse, no difficulty. In fact, he probably doesn't even need to be in the same universe as Jujutsu Kaisen to solo all of them. But to explain why that is, let's first give a really brief reminder of how strong Gojo is. So today, I'll ask the audience to try and relax and tweak out as little as possible as I give you guys multiple ways to interpret Gojo's power and then explain what Jinwoo is going to do to him realistically. Whenever I give these ranges or these equivocal statements like, hey, if you lowball him or highball him, people really just try to grasp at straws or try to claim that I think whatever they dislike about what I say. That's not the point of this. This is just to educate you on sort of the range Gojo is at realistically. The most bare bones and lowest conceivable level of strength for Gojo is just raw feat scaling. You place him above the likes of Jogo's meteor shaking up a city, or him creating earthquakes when he appeared from the prison box with just his presence. Maybe Hikari and Toji reacting to electricity and lightning bolts, and potentially Sukuna reacting to a light speed electromagnetic wave from Cursed Amber Kashimo. His Hollow Purple still has durability negation due to the fact it's stated in the bonus chapter explanations that it rips through space itself. Durability negation with alright speed and an ability that probably stops any conventional attack from hitting him gives him good odds, especially against the likes of a more generic fighter like a casual shinobi from Naruto or maybe an average pirate from One Piece. If you want a huge mathematical breakdown on his infinity technique, I go over it very in-depth here, including a bunch of math lectures and so on to explain how things like Kakashi's Kamui and other attacks would interact with it. The lowball for infinity is that it may be able to be perception blitzed and has levels of activation tied into it. This is implied a few times, but it's a bit unrealistic, just like saying Gojo's top power is scaling to Gojo's meteor, who he would just one-tap just by walking into him, which he literally does to Hanami. A lower scale that isn't just ignoring stuff is saying Gojo scales above, say, domain expansions of Dagon, who can create a whole island to possibly Horizon with the sea on it. And remember, he is the curse of the sea, so the sea around the island is probably real and bigger than the island part, with a fake sunlight source and a decently sized sky. Stuff like the size of the sky and the horizon is usually used to calc a lot of places in fiction, like Las Noches from Bleach, and its huge sky canopy area that you can see like when Rukia is falling down here, that would be nuked by the Espada at full power, like Ukiura. Speed would likely be similar in this category, with him maybe reacting to an attack in Jogo's domain, but that could be argued as Gojo just being too strong and reinforcing himself. The more mid to high end kind of stuff is saying he can potentially scale to Yuki's black hole curse technique. And while this is a self-sacrificing technique, so would something like Kashimo's cursed amber ability. So it wouldn't really be out of character for Sukuna or Gojo to not care about these things. There are many statements that Gojo's curse technique is the most powerful, even greater than Yuki's gravity curse technique, which can be amplified to the point it creates a black hole, exerting mass and then controlling the concept of mass to its most insane level, which eventually just results in a black hole. This makes sense on more of a conventional level, as Gojo is manipulating the very space and infinity that mass would even reside upon. Takaba is the only other one in JJK stated to have an ability on Gojo's level specifically, outside of maybe Sukuna, just straight up manipulates reality to the form of comedy he employs. He can't control it that well. Gojo's curse technique is also multiple degrees of infinitely harder to adapt to than Yorozu, who creates an infinite point ball that would mathematically have infinite attack potency and ignore all finite or conventional durability. Yet Maharaga just adapted to the concept of bug and smashes it. Yet can't do that to Limitless or Gojo without an entire crazy long-standing battle. He can also move inside the prison realm box, which has no time within it in the guides and so forth. You can make an argument saying that they have time and not have time, and make more of it, it's talking about the time of the reality, or what you would call time, say the time of the universe. This is sort of common in other media, but if it's not taken that way, you could sort of start to wank out some infinite speed, time-ignoring Gojo stuff with planet-level type attacks. Albeit Hollow Purple would just negate the space and mass that the previous types of attacks would even really operate on, said maybe the black hole itself. From there, you get into his mind hacks and his Limitless being levels of infinite spatial manipulation and laws being layered over him that you can't pierce conventionally. Probably needing some space-time slashing or ignoring technique to touch him, which is what Maharaga and Sukuna seem to come up with eventually, just making an attack that selects targets and ignores distance. There are many more types of arguments like Toji's chain stating to have infinite length and other weird oddities, but those are the most standard on the low to higher end, and most people usually feel more comfortable just scaling them above maybe the domain expansions. So what about Jinwoo? In the anime, we don't see much from Jinwoo outside of him aura farming on fodders, leveling up, maybe learning a bit about his power system. He does have an interesting fear hacks ability and sort of like an aura suppression ability, which could maybe be useful against Gojo. Slowly, he grows his repertoire and notoriety in the Hunter world. He has some regen-based full restore items, abilities, poisons, the ability to teleport and shift himself, but not very much for crossfers. In fact, if you went off the anime alone, you could reasonably argue Jinwoo could lose. Even with the completed mainline manhwa, it seems hard-pressed he'd win with how little knowledge there is outside of maybe BFR arguments or battlefield removal arguments or overpowering infinity type debates. It's not like Baru ever showed some absolutely insane feats before Jinwoo defeated him, nor did really much of anything. Even the Dragon Monarch, the final opponent of Jinwoo, is stated to have attacks like a beam of light and can maybe threaten the whole planet itself, with there being weird lines like Jinwoo would have to be able to shatter a mountain to hurt this guy. With that stuff, you can see why Gojo might take it, even with just hacks, with Jinwoo mainly just being a statement merchant, hitting him with an unlimited void, frying his brain with infinite information. But maybe you can argue Jinwoo can swap out with a shadow, which is very reasonable and a good counter, but you get the idea, and I'll go over that type of stuff a bit later after I properly tell you how strong Jinwoo should be. That being said, there was something about solo leveling that was really odd to me in the manhwa, and that concept was the god that created their universe was killed by its own creations. And then Jinwoo clearly surpassed all of those creations. Yet these beings are all mountain busters or a planet buster. It didn't add up. Something about the lore was just missing, and my brain was just going haywire. Like, all right, I don't want to say these guys are galaxy level or something, but many downplayed this for a time. They'd say, well, we don't know how long it took for God to make their universe. It could have been like an eternal cycle or an eternal methodology that he used. You know, he clearly doesn't scale to his creation. His creation killed him, right? So we don't know how to quantify it. Well, with solo leveling Ragnarok, we 100% do know now. And it really, really eased my mind because that really didn't sit right with me at all. So throughout all of Ragnarok, we learn of the creator gods race known as interims, with the other members of their species being called outer gods, which all reside in the outer universe, which is basically sort of a multiverse or outside of the concepts of space and time of their multiverse, because the universe that Jinwoo's god did make, he made the universe, probably endless dimensions connected with like a Yggdrasil type world tree. It gets really complicated. Anyway, the normal universe in solo leveling is layered endlessly with dimensions, yet all extending with one creator god's creation. These outer gods then basically try to invade the universe when they learn it's empty of its own god, and the protag of Ragnarok has to fend them off on the back line while Jinwoo is literally in outer space in the deep stretches of the universe fighting off the invading forces of eldritch beings all by himself. This leads us to eventually reaching the climax, which was the last 30 chapters of Ragnarok, when it's finally time to watch one of these creator gods in combat, and we get to see Jinwoo actually get the scaling that you were sort of suspicious of through the main line. The first encounter is Jinwoo summoning Barrow, the ant you see in the anime, now at a maxed out martial rank, going life and death with the eyeball of an outer god. And this thing just staring at you rips through time and space as it gazes through worlds through tens of thousands of different angles, and Barrow has to fight it and almost rip its eye out. Now, the weird thing about these creator gods is that they seem to really like this shit. Like, they actually want you to be able to fuck them up. And then after his eyeball gets ripped out, he leaks this blood waterfall that just negates concepts and the fundamental particles of their reality. It's very bizarre. So even though this outer god could heal itself instantly, it just decides not to. And then that's why you'll realize, so that's kind of leading into why the creator god was killed by its own creations, because they like that shit. Then the Dragon Monarch from the first series, Antares, returns with Suho, Jinwoo's son, returns with the Ragnarok protag, and it's then revealed that the Dragon Monarch was made to hate everything from God to be a weapon against other outer gods. So he was given the authority of destruction. So the ability to destroy whatever God creates. This is after it basically snapped its fingers in a flash, rewrote the entire universe so that Jinwoo's son would lose all his powers and would give him his family back in a whole new life where he got everything he wanted. So think of omnipotence in Boruto from Ada, where it's used to rewrite everyone's memories, but in this case, it's actually that, but the entire universe is rewritten in an instant. Like, just literally. Even a clone of Jinwoo, everything, just remade. So, more of a higher dimensional Shibai or One Punch Man God type character would be a way of explaining the vibe that can easily surpass the spatial boundaries of a universe and interact with all its concepts, decide its laws of physics and logic and beyond. Suho is able to resist this, and then it's eventually stated that Jinwoo has an equivalent, if not superior concept later, that lets him overwrite law manipulation even on a universal, and probably, I'm going to be honest, multi-universal scale, as there's multiple characters stated to be infinite, endless, there's endless dimensions, blah, blah, blah. They then start fighting after Interim tells everyone on Earth to just explode, and they all do. So imagine Super Boo, instead of like raising his arm in the air and shooting everyone one by one, he just says die, and they all just explode. That's pretty much what happens. The Interim at first squishes time and space of the entire universe to then reach off to a far nebula to throw meteors at them, shatters their planet, which then leads to a more serious encounter fighting the Outer Gods as it chomps through the universe into space-time itself to the other outer multiverse while it gets gradually more serious. Then, as they scream apart stars, planets, they're shredding the universe apart, space-time to pieces, they create Big Bang-like explosions where sound can't exist. It's then stated that the Dragon Monarch rips through concepts themselves and destroys them, meaning even if the Creator God changes the very laws of reality, making even the laws of physics, logic, whatever have you that is in that reality, the Dragon Monarch and Suho together with this Ragnarok can just annihilate him. This then leads into the final introduction to what we were all waiting for, which is post-time skip Jinwoo. In the words of the creator of the system that many anime onlys would be familiar with, his aura then becomes a world, which in this case is a universe itself that surpassed and made things like light, sound, and even time meaningless. As he went on to 3v1 Outer Gods, throwing literally mind hacks abilities at him. So think of Gojo's mind hacks argument. Now you have these multiversal eldritch beings using specific creator mind hacks with law manipulation, and it can't reach him. They're throwing galaxies at him like a cannonball, and he just stands in front of it like Jiren from the Turn of Power with his aura, and none of it can touch him, because his ability negates these properties. So how does this apply to Gojo? Well, at this point, I think it's a bit common sense, but these statements are pretty much everything every Gojo fan wishes Gojo had, and act like he has, but without wanking. Gojo's ability to manipulate space on a small scale around his body with high precision would get overwritten by a multi-universal to probably, I'm gonna be honest, multiversal law. I've never seen a series with like this many levels of infinite and this many infinite statements. It seems a bit dishonest to deny it. So it's a multiversal law manipulating deity that transcends the reality, rewrites all of its history and laws of logic and physics or even concepts on a whim. So none of Gojo's ability would actually even touch Jinwoo. His aura is literally just infinity on roids, surpassing space and time and making them meaningless while he rewrites their laws, let alone manipulating them. So in this case, Jinwoo, all of these Outer Gods, they might just be able to rewrite the space and its laws that Gojo is manipulating, and he just wouldn't even know what to manipulate anymore. It might not even exist in the same capacity. The same paradoxes or laws might not even exist on the space that he's trying to curse with his energy. So even Gojo's actual power here is pretty exaggerated, being compared to Takaba and his ability to change reality around him slightly with his immediate surroundings with fodder characters that the Dragon Monarch would kill on accident by just yelling and chasing down an Outer God. In fact, this Dragon Monarch would solo their verse while chasing the Outer God while yelling at it. Like their planet would just die as collateral, probably on accident. If for whatever reason you think Jinwoo couldn't get through infinity, there's so many ways to argue he does. And in fact, it actually gets pretty funny. He easily engulfs him in his aura, and he can just engulf the entire universe in his aura, or BFR him, or remove him into a realm that makes the prison realm look like child's play, while easily stat checking any ability he has to manipulate time and space, even on a conceptual or law level. Same would apply here. Even if Gojo put Jinwoo in Unlimited Void, he can actually replace himself with his shadow, like Madara can with his Limbo clones when he fights Six Paths Naruto and Sasuke, and can teleport anywhere in a timeless beyond 4D using some Einstein terminology. Black space is big or bigger than a multi-universal god character's ability to manipulate, with tens of millions of summonings that all can cut through time, space, and you just get Jinwoo. Now, Jinwoo can also fight for decades straight without stopping. So while Gojo's brain is frying, just trying to throw and move Limitless onto someone, and it's in character for Gojo to try to hit Limitless Void on him a few times, it's also not in character for Gojo to give up against someone who he thinks is stronger than him. He wants to prove or find out who's the strongest. So that and the multiple statements of just ignoring space and time and surpassing it makes it unlikely Gojo will ever do anything. In fact, Gojo's only win con is hoping he can stall forever. Like there's no offensive win con for Gojo, ever. Saitama is honestly getting fried as well by Jinwoo pretty casually. In fact, even if Saitama goes on and eventually one-shots his god character, it wouldn't even mean anything compared to this, as we learn more and more what higher dimensional beings are in fiction and have to be, and how it would apply to these creator deities that Jinwoo faces in the dozens pretty casually. At best, infinity is a finite space that Gojo can divide infinitely and slow things down that approach it, but the ability to manipulate this is beneath the authority of Jinwoo's ability to ignore it, change the properties of, surpass the phenomena he's manipulating, and infinity is sort of limited, surprisingly, that certain things reach Gojo through it, and Jinwoo would have many ways to attack him, including fear hacks, which is just visualizing him or even seeing the abyss that he holds. There are many statements in the novel of just gazing at Jinwoo. He is the abyss where that it gauges back at you, and so are these outer gods. So even looking at Jinwoo will negate some of your abilities. So even if you had to remove Gojo from the battlefield and snare him into a realm beyond the prison realm, jump him for the rest of eternity with beings that almost rival a Big Bang until Gojo gets tired, but that's just wanking Gojo. Be real for a moment. The interim would just look at Gojo with his eyeball, and Gojo would explode as he looks through everything beyond Earth with a gaze that cuts through space-time, ignoring all distance, everything. It's literally just anything between its sight and what it's looking at is chopped through. That Jinwoo far surpasses and may be able to do it himself if the gaze is just due to power and authority, which Jinwoo has. This is an explanation that even some of the crazier Gojo glazers I think can get behind, and that's literally a superior phenomenon to what Sukuna uses to actually chop Gojo in half later. Spoiler. That being said, Jinwoo is probably someone who needs to fight whatever created Gojo's entire reality, and not Gojo himself. So even with Limitless Void hitting a direct shot on Jinwoo, we see that characters can still think and conjure incantations, and while they do so, think of Sukuna, think of Jogo even thinking of sentences, which gives Jinwoo many options to escape on top of being able to swap but be broken out of it from the outside, or to even flood the space with his superior authority. Many people exaggerate Limitless Void, but it's more like you feel like you're experiencing those things that are described rather than literally at the time. But there really is no way for Gojo to put him down. He's just that level of a character at this point. While Gojo plays God in Japan, he's just not the same as a creator deity type character dealing with these high level concepts and sometimes even potentially higher metaphysical arguments of eldritch beings outside time and space, creating multiverses that Jinwoo is confronted for viewing as just entertainment. As it's revealed at the end, all of these gods did all this for fun, and then Jinwoo actually sets up these gods versus his son so he can watch for fun, showing he's even beyond that. That being said, Jinwoo is probably more of an opponent for a Goku, Saitama. I don't know, you guys think he can fight a Justice League member? Can he fight Superman? Those are really more where he should probably be going at this point. I don't think the battle shonen genre is really holding him at this point. I don't really think a Bleach character or Naruto character, One Piece character. He's sort of next level at that point, if that makes sense. Anyways, hope you did enjoy the video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.